when Healer Please was new map choice Battlefield. We'll talk about that in a second. When Healer Please was subbing for BTG, he did like his utmost to make him feel welcome. And when they like were performing really well, even though it wasn't his team, he was going, "Oh, you were so good, BTG Healer Please, yes." It was such a friendly guy. I love him.
Man, I think you need to have this, open-minded, friendly, mindset as a coach. Sometimes you need to be strict, though, if someone, for example, goes a little wild in the draft or in the team communications. But for the most part, it's all about, building your players up, keeping them motivated and in high spirit. And Zeron certainly excels at that. And the question is now, Battlefield of Eternity, you mentioned it, Tetcher. That is a map chosen by CE this time around. And both teams, Chinese teams in general, they feel so comfortable in this.
We're going to be seeing the Garage ban, double tank ban, before we even see a Genji or a Maiev. Interesting. So now SPT should just not ban one? Okay, no, they don't want to give CE the other one, I guess. Because the option they could have done is if they feel comfortable playing with either, just not ban one of those, like ban Deckard or something, and force CE to even not ban another one. And that way SPT gets their choice of the two, or they could CE would have banned the other one and SPT would have got whatever's left over.
Now, I can't wait to see Tyrande on this battleground. She was actually sometimes considered before the most recent rework, like very much, very rarely. But now, with her being so strong and still adding the old strengths on Battlefield of Eternity, namely that Ranger's Mark, that Hunter's Mark to provide extra damage, I can see her dominate that battleground, but a very early Kharazim and a very early Hanzo. One is not a big surprise, the other one is.
Yes, over Deckard Cain, Kharazim comes out. And here's what I've been starting to notice. This seems to be a theme within the HGC China teams, where Kharazim seems to be the priority choice against a Tyrande. Reasoning for this is because a lot of Tyrande's healing is more consistent ping starter fields, assuming she's getting consistent damage output, meaning the anti-heal doesn't get as much damage as it would on, say, a burst heal if it's timed for enough from someone like a Malfuria, well, Malfuria not a burst heal, but it's over time, or an Alexstrasza, for example. That's a perfect example. So instead, and Tyrande, her best advantage comes from when she's not being pressured. Kharazim is a good amount of healing normally, great pressure to squishy backliners like a Tyrande. So in theory, I think that a lot of people are leaning towards Kharazim as the better support when running into a Tyrande. Also, better Immortal Race on this map.
That is true. He offers the Iron Fists, of course, which can never be underestimated when it comes to, getting that extra inch of damage in there. I'm actually surprised for SPT to ban away the Blaze, because when you show that early Anubarak, you basically want to make sure that those cocoons don't get popped. And who's the best cocoon popper in the game? It is Li Ming. Also a great pick on Battlefield of Eternity, but it is actually ignored by CE entirely.
Very peculiar indeed, as we see this coming out. Just as a point, I said I would talk about the map win rates here. SPT, this used to be their top map, but this phase, they only have a 55% win rate on it over 11 games. Sorry, no, since they've had this roster, so that would technically include last phase as well. Whereas CE, since they've had this roster, they have a 100% win rate, a 3-0 on Battlefield. SPT looking to shut that down.
All right, that's some interesting insight. Now, the thing is, for CE right now, I believe they do not feel competent and comfortable, actually, enough to play a Li Ming. And that has been something, Juyu has actually been their main Li Ming player back in the past when he was still in that range role, right? But he's now main tank. And neither XTQ nor Alufal have shown us, stellar mage play throughout the region. But Arthas is back in the mix. Alrighty then. Against Cassia, he can be very punishing. Against Rainier, he can be good if he's in range. That is an interesting call here by CE right now. Keep in mind, guys, this is not the buffed Arthas yet. He did receive a buff in the most recent balance update. More health is always good, but not in this one.
It's very interesting to see here. This Immortal Race is pretty okay for CE. Hard Engage is a bit less so. Like, Arthas is a little bit more difficult to engage with. Obviously, his route is fantastic if you can land it, but it's a lot more telegraphed, like than a lot of other tanks these days. So, It's an interesting choice here. There's a lot of ways to get around his damage resistances, including the martial law coming in once again to get that ignorance on the armor, but they have to stay at range to be able to make use of it.
I still think Arthas can work. What's very important for Arthas is, like, either he gets protected very well and doesn't get kited too long. Like in a straight-up fight in which SPT can kite and run away and, you know, escape the roots, the stuns, and whatnot that SPT has, I think Arthas is going to get chipped down pretty hard, both by Cassia and Raynor. But, and here comes the big but, right? I mean, Huoho on the side of the one, they have always known how to make Arthas work. How? By surprising people with a flank, coming in from behind, from the sides. And that is how you make sure people can't run away from you that easily, and that is how you stick to them like glue and get those kills in.
Exactly. But right now, remember, the score is 1-1. We have decent Immortal race for both teams, but that Arthas is very much an X factor coming in for CE. Will it be what they need? We will be finding out very shortly once we get to that lovely rock music telling us that the game is ready.
The game will start and launch very soon. There we go. The hype music is live, and that means good things for both you and I, Tetcher. We're about to dive in onto BOE. Currently, an equalized score, 1-1. Who can take a lead? Can only be one team, and on the left-hand side, in the blues, on Battlefield of Eternity, it is the super perfect team. Lucky, Melody C, Misaka, Soap, and ZZH.
And on the right, it is CE Challenge of Alufal, XTQ, 365, KTY, and Zhuyu.
Oh man, this is where it all comes down to. Raynor immediately locking in the Exterminator. Probably doesn't even have to think twice about it. When you have a Hanzo on the enemy team, you want to at least match the clearing speed somehow. Cassia also going for charged strikes, not going for the poke-oriented Thunderstroke build.
We see them moving up to the top lane. And they're going to go do a quick tower rush, making the most of those Anub'arak Beetles, but it's a double hero defense. They did not expect that and immediately pull back.
Yeah, and I really like how both Thrall and Phoenix were bursting down those beetles so the towers would basically shoot heroes immediately. Cool move. Also, ladies and gentlemen, Crash Lightning is back online, and this is definitely one of those maps in which it can work like a charm, right? Whenever there's a static objective that can usually not be ignored that easily, where the enemy team is committed to fighting all the time, that's where you build up those Crash Lightning stacks, right? That's where you really get that damage rolling for the later stages of the game.
That is indeed the case for now, though they have to wait. We do also see the Calorai Resistance coming in for the Tyrande. So protection there. I'm pretty sure we have spoken about the Regen Master on this map just so many times. I don't think I've ever seen it stacked on this map, but it's still value even if you don't finish it.
It's really hard to get value from it, I agree, because it only has 2 maps, like BOE that is, and when there's one less lane to soak from, you know, to get regen globes from, it naturally becomes a little harder. The only way to really speed up the process for Misaka here is, of course, if they win every single Immortal, because every Immortal drops 2 globes standard. And maybe getting a couple of additional mercenary camps in there as well. Good stun coming in on Arthas, but that's another thing about Arthas, especially later on if he goes for Icebound Fortitude, he's going to have Hold That Thought. You're sticking to Misaka like glue, getting the beetle popped as well, and first blood secured by CE.
Nicely done, CE. Great effectiveness, great pressure applied there. And with that first blood, they immediately move on to that mercenary camp in reaction to the Merc camp taken a couple seconds ago by SPT in the top lane. Phoenix is currently doing his best to try and clean that up. He does, of course, have that phase bomb attack mode, which is going to give him some good AoE to allow him to defend that a little bit safer.
Still takes a little bit of a beating here. Only one Phoenix is not enough to stop this push from happening. Something I wanted to quickly bring up again because I couldn't finish my thought earlier. You know, whenever Arthas gets level 7, he should, against this team composition with so many stuns from Tyrande, from Anub'arak as well, he should go Icebound Fortitude, and all of a sudden this tank becomes very resilient against CC.
Very true. And he's one of the few tanks who has anything that affects CC at all, in fact. So it is nice to see that, and I agree with you. I think that's what we should be seeing, and it should be very effective.
Okay, up to this point, only one hero was taken down. Only one beetle had to say goodbye, but this is probably where things are going to ramp up a little bit. This is where the first Immortal is going to spawn. We see Arthas, by the way, teleporting back to base just in time to get full mana, because without a doubt, next to Tyrael, Arthas currently is one of the most mana-consuming warriors in the game.
That he is. Although, in terms of mana consuming, Thrall will struggle as well with Crash Lightning later on, which is why he has gone for that Mana Tide at level 4. So he's going to have an easier time. Great combo, and goodbye Alooful. Didn't even stand a chance.
Oh, that is a hero that cannot afford to get caught like that. Alooful does have the natural agility, but if you don't have vision on the enemy team, and if they lock you down before even using that, you're in for some trouble. Zuyu locking onto Raynor, just trying to distract them a little bit, but that is such a big lead for SPT, almost uncontested the first 50% of this first Immortal.
Now we see Zuyu trying to be a zoning tool for his team, but he's just getting kited. Did he somehow animation cancel that first route?
That looked very peculiar indeed. Let's take a look at the racing potentially. Of course, that's where the Hunter's Mark of Tyrande kicks in as well. And they take that with not really great ease. I was going to say with great ease, but look at the health, man. That is the Hanzo factor that can always kick in.
Yeah, that's pre-full stacks, I believe, Hanzo factor. So good job Alooful returning there to assist his team in that counter race and lower some of the pressure. But SPT all grouped up and ready to dive because they have a Nubrak. So if they need to, they will absolutely put the pressure on. They have level 7 as well. Talent advantage for a couple seconds. Will they try and commit with it?
And what works against neutral objectives also works against enemy objectives here. Hanzo Alooful trying the best he can to keep this objective away. But look at that. That is the problem of Zuyu on that Arthas. He doesn't have those surprising moments. Like, he can't just jump in there and cause a little bit of commotion. All he has to, or he has in his arsenal, is to walk in there and try to get a kill this way. They find Cassia. The Earth Ally is being popped immediately as well. But the fort survives. It took a heavy amount of damage, though.
Yeah, that will not take long to kill off. Lucky will be able to finish that off himself. Misaka could probably dive it if he needed to. It's gonna die. You even see a little Lightning Fury being chucked in there, setting up for it. Nubrak could have aimed a little bit better. Good blind onto Zuyu there. And we will see the fort still surviving.
And now all of a sudden SPT needs to be careful, right? Because they're running out of minions. They still have beetles, of course, and these little fellas are so annoying to deal with when you're the defending team. But it looks like CE is evacuating. They realize, you know what? Mana bars are getting low on Thrall and Kharazim, and without those two heroes, there is no way we can defend that.
Yeah, they finish it off, and as such, that is going to be the first fort of the game, going over to SPT. They react and celebrate by taking a mercenary camp and preparing to prevent CE from doing the same.
Okay, where's Arthas right now? He's, of course, the most important hero when it comes to fighting on those mercenary platforms, because he provides so much value onto those clumped up heroes. I think later on, you know, with that Tyrael in the mix, this could actually make for some interesting spots and fights around those mercenaries, with Holy Ground maybe coming into play there as well. Let's see what these fights are going to look like. For now, SPT is in full control. They're taking mercenary camp after mercenary camp. See, in the meanwhile, they're busy clearing the bottom. They were also trying to get some value in the bottom half. Failed to do so, though, and level 10 is ever so closely creeping up on SPT.
Yeah, they are trying to get there before the next objective phase. Need someone in bot lane if they want to, though, but right now it's so pushed up that it's too risky. They could certainly get it from a kill, though. Alooful is the target again, and he gets wiped out.
And that is the danger, man. That is the danger zone for CE. Once a Nubrak gets that bird charge or that impale going onto him, the Tyrande follows up with a long-range Lunar Blaze, and Hanzo just doesn't have the tankiness, just doesn't have the reliable escape tool to preemptively dodge that. Super frustrating right now for CE to keep losing their most important core racer, Immortal Racer.
Exactly, it's a big problem for them as we see the Immortals once again splitting the sides.
Are they just entirely giving it up?
I think they are. They're just trying to soak level 10 themselves. They don't want to fight, and as such, that is going to be a 100% shield Immortal coming in, well, close to it, coming in for SPT, and that's going to be a big push into top lane.
And now you are in a golden sweet spot if you're SPT. Not only do you have an almost full shield Immortal at this stage, which can snowball out of control, but you also have that lockdown available, that cocoon. If you catch someone while defending the Immortal, standing, you know, all of a sudden in the middle of minions and, you know, enemy heroes, even if it's Arthas, you can pop those guys up, causing some staggered deaths, causing even more momentum to go into your hands. This is a very tricky situation for CE to find themselves in.
Chased forward by Melody Seed, not enough to catch anyone this time, but it's still being the front line almost, just trying to poke in as much range as possible, while leaving Misaka the ability to just jump in at a moment's notice into that classic bush.
Okay, he found the opening here. The wall is down.
But it's going to be a Dragon Arrow completely whiffed that will be the trigger for SPT to push hard. The Hyperion being dropped the second that Dragon Arrow goes past as they dive forward looking for Zhuyu. Icebound Fortitude, though, keeps him going, but the damage is good. Karazim heal keeps him alive, and he's able to pop his ult, and Tyrael has to drop the Sank to stay alive.
Cocoon onto Karazim. Can they lock him down? Does Misaka have a stun ready to follow it up on? They're trying with Tyrande launching the fight first. They're going into Phoenix, though, causing so much distraction. He escapes with a teleport, but is super low.
Yeah, splitting the target. I think they could have killed Karazim if they comboed their stuns. Instead, they committed to Phoenix, but already dropped some CC on Karazim. So as such, both heroes escape, but in the meantime, the game just ends unless this salvo gets a huge amount of value, but it's not enough. That's game. Game number 3 in favor of SPT.
Wow, below 10 minutes, SPT steamrolling over CE. You know, all it takes sometimes is to find those targets over and over again. And Alufo, I hate to put my finger onto one person in particular, but his positioning really was what cost them the game there. He shouldn't have been caught twice in a row.
He shouldn't have. That was definitely unusual to see, but in this case, man, like you said, Alufo shouldn't be caught twice in a row, especially on Hanzo, who is, squishy, but has great escape, but that's why you have a Nubarak, who's such
why you have a Sonic Arrow too.
Punishes positioning, and Sonic Arrow to try and prevent the prevent those ganks, but they happened, so a bit of a misplay there.
That's sometimes how Heroes of the Storm goes, though. You're the MVP in one game, in one series on that Thrall against KT, and on the other end, you're sometimes also the liability factor sometimes if you end up getting caught over and over again. But I think it would be a little unfair to just, put the finger on Aloof and say, haha, you lost the game. There's certainly more to it. First of all, there's SPT, who are spot on positioning. They knew exactly where to find these members that they could collapse on. And also, sometimes you have to take the blame a little bit onto the warrior, onto the tank, right? Because Arthas needed to be the one being there in the first place. True, you could say Hanzo shouldn't take over the role of Arthas, but sometimes you don't have the time to just wait until the warrior arrives. So I think as a whole, CE just wasn't really focused, just wasn't really on the same page here.
Yeah, they tried to go a little bit off meta, and unfortunately, that might have been lack of practice, might have just been missed calls, but it did not work out in their favor this time. As such, 2-1 towards SPT. They are now one game closer to going to play against the one tomorrow, winner of which, of course, would go to BlizzCon. CE, though, they have to win 2 in a row.
All it takes is one more game for SPT until they face the gatekeepers, until they face the one that could either let them in and go to BlizzCon, or that could say no and shut them out. And as the currently reigning champions of China, SPT, I think it's the least they can expect from this season to make it to California, to make it to BlizzCon later on this year. Maybe even defend their title. That should actually be their main goal, right? Not only to go to BlizzCon, but defend their title against BTG. And
absolutely. SPT would love to be champions once again for a second time in a row. CE would love to reclaim that title as they were. Yeah, it was CE, then SPT, and that is the current championship order.
That it is. The one came close several times, but they always seem to falter in those playoffs, man. They always get so close only to break down. I think it was SPT who stopped them last time, and it could be SPT or maybe even BTG to stop them this time around. Or CE, if they stabilize, if they make that comeback happen. We've seen them hold a game on Dragonshire very nicely, so I think they have the player material, they have what it takes to make it happen. It's just, everything needs to be in focus, man. No more aloof mistakes, no more wonky drafts, because I really felt like this draft wasn't really it. Karazim in particular seemed very lackluster too. Today doesn't seem to be the day of Karazim. 3 games he was picked, 0 wins.
I think you're right. Yeah, he's not doing
twice by KT,
well
once by CE right now. And SPT also lost with it.
Yeah, you're right. That is an unusual statistic, as Karazim's usually pretty decent overall. But yeah, like you said, he has not had decent games at all today.
So maybe it's time to switch it up. Where's the Chinese Alexstrasza when we need her? Where are other supports, like maybe the Rhaegar, maybe some Doge coming in here as well? ZZH, though, speaking of supports, man, Tyrande dominating. Absolutely well played from start to finish here.
Also, what a KDA. Very aesthetically pleasing.
He doesn't even play for the one.
Yeah, but maybe it's a message. We're coming for you. But either way, nicely done. And